To believe in government necessarily requires a person to have internal conflicts and contradictions. Basically, to believe in government requires a person to be a little bit insane and delusional and out of touch with reality. I'm going to use an example about how social media platforms often have a policy of having a rule against the advocacy of violence, which, okay, fair enough. You're allowed to do that. In fact, on your own platform, you're allowed to advocate whatever rules you want, whether I think they're stupid or not. So I'm not taking issue with the rule. I'm taking issue with the fact that the people who make those rules are always lying and don't even notice. They're always completely delusional and out of touch with reality, but they can't see that. So imagine a scenario in which some woman is home alone late at night and some big scary guy breaks in at 2 a.m. With the intention of kidnapping her, brutally attacks her and kidnaps her. Now, that's violence. That's bad. Advocating that is bad. I hope I didn't really need to explain that to any of you. And so having a policy that says, hey, if anybody says that's okay, we don't want you saying that on our platform. Okay, cool. Yeah, I wouldn't either. That's messed up. Now, suppose somebody is discussing a scenario like that and somebody says, in that case, I think the woman should defend herself. Like hit him with a chair, or better yet, have a gun and shoot the psycho to stop him from kidnapping you and attacking you. Now, that is advocating the use of physical force. And we can do semantic nitpicking about whether that counts as violence or whether violence is from the root to violate. So the word violence should only be used to describe immoral force, not justified defensive force. So that's a semantics thing, but I'm going to skip that. Either way, violent conflict is being talked about. Now, if somebody said, yeah, I hope the woman defends herself by any means necessary, most people will go, well, that's good. Yeah, duh. Obviously, I hope so too. And most of these platforms will say, yeah, well, that doesn't count as advocating violence. You're talking about somebody defending themselves from an attacker. So that's fine. You won't get banned for that. Good. Cool. So far, so good. What if the aggressor in this scenario happens to be employed as a law enforcer? He has a badge and a uniform. He's not wearing it right now. He's not on duty, but that's his job. Does that change the morality of it? And most people go, well, no, you're still not allowed to just randomly attack and kidnap people. Okay, so we're still okay with talking about the woman having a right to forcibly defend herself? Like, that isn't violence. She's not the bad guy. Like, once violence is happening, to oppose her being able to do that or being able to talk about that, that is pro-violence. Because once a violent attack is happening, it's not a question of whether there's going to be violence or not. Like, there is. It's too late for that. The only question is, which force is going to win out? Is it the immoral, aggressive force of the attacker or the righteous, defensive force of the intended victim or somebody else helping them out and trying to save them? So once there is an attacker, it's too late for nonviolence. Like, violence is going to happen. The only question is, who's going to win it? The good guys or the bad guys? And the bad guys are the attacker. Okay, so that's still pretty clear. And most people would say, yeah, if he has a badge, like, and happens to have that job, that doesn't change morality. Okay, what if he has that badge and that uniform and he's on duty? And people start to get a little bit uncomfortable, but they'd still say, well, he doesn't have the right to just attack somebody. I mean, is he like legally arresting her or doing a search warrant or something? We'll get to that in a minute. But so far, people would still be on the side of, well, if you're an on-duty cop and you're just randomly breaking into someone's house and attacking them, that's still pretty bad. And people might hesitate a little bit, but we still have to acknowledge that the person has the right to defend themselves with, whatever force necessary to stop the attack. Okay, that's fine. Good, I agree. Would you get banned for advocating violence? If you say, I hope the woman defends herself by any means necessary from this psycho attacker, would you get banned if the guy happens to be a cop and happens to be an on-duty cop? Probably not. What if you take that exact same scenario, exactly what I described, and the only difference is that a few years earlier, a few politicians, thousands of miles away that don't know either of these people, passed a law that said if you're in possession of a certain plant or a mushroom or a substance or something or other that they've outlawed, then we hereby authorize our enforcers to kick down your door in the middle of the night and point a gun at you and kidnap you to drag you away and put you in a cage. So the act didn't change at all. But some politicians said, yeah, we want that to happen. We want that violent aggression against a person who didn't threaten or harm anyone. We want that to happen. Now what happens to the morality? Oh, well, now right is wrong and wrong is right because politicians scribbled some stuff in their weird pseudo-religious cult rituals, and now it's the law. Okay, now are we allowed to talk about the woman having the right to forcibly defend against the violent big thug kidnapper guy? Certainly not. He's just doing his job and enforcing the law. No, the act didn't change at all. The act is still immoral. He's still the aggressor. He's still the attacker. He's still the one doing the wrong thing. It's already violence. And this is the part that makes statists delusional. Every statist knows that the law is not just a friendly suggestion or request. It's a command or a demand backed by a threat of violence. If you get caught disobeying the law, men with guns are going to come do unpleasant things to you. May only be imposing a fine. It may be they drag you off and put you in a cage. But it's going to be enforced. Force is in the word, not suggested. It's enforced, as in with violence. When someone believes in government, they necessarily have to believe that somebody has authority, because that's what government is. It's the exercise of authority over a people or place. Well, authority means the right to rule. So they have to look at that scenario and go, oh, that poor woman, I hope she defends herself. Oh, wait a minute, some politicians said that that violent attack was supposed to happen. Well, then she better not defend herself and become a criminal and a terrorist, maybe even a cop killer. And anyone posting anything of the sort should be banned for advocating violence. There is the irony. If you believe in government, you advocate violence. I don't care what kind of government, left, right, moderate, minimal, minarchist, libertarian, constitutionalist. If you vote to have a ruling class do anything through the aggressive force of law, you're advocating violence. And to be so dishonest and schizophrenic and insane to advocate violent aggression against people who didn't threaten or hurt anyone, feel perfectly good about it, and then if they mention the possibility of defending themselves, oh, you're the violent one. And that's what all the platforms do. What they mean is you're not allowed to advocate violent aggression against innocent people unless it's sanctioned by a ruling class. Then not only are you encouraged to advocate that all over the freaking place, because that's our democratic process, but you're condemned in evil if you advocate that anybody defend themselves against it. And the closer you look, the more insane it gets. Because give that scenario. Let's say there's that woman and someone did a tip that she's smoking pot in a state where you're not allowed to. Let's say she's right at the state line. And her female friend that lives next door, yeah, they were hanging out smoking pot and then they both go home and go to bed. But this one lives in a state where it's legal. But this one, oh, she was naughty because the politician said, not only can't you do that, but we're allowed to send men with guns that you don't know, big burly strangers, to violently attack you in the middle of the night and kidnap you and drag you away and put you in a cage. for the good of society. Never mind that insanity. Think of how insane you have to be. And you have to be this insane to believe in government. To think that there's two houses with two people doing the exact same thing. And if they both get violently assaulted in the middle of the night by somebody intending to kidnap them, this one has to go along with it and cooperate and allow herself to be violently dominated and kidnapped. And if she defends herself, it's horrible. But if the exact identical thing happens next door over the state line where that stuff is legal, not only is it not okay to attack her, but if she violently resists and shoots the guy who's attacking her, everybody goes, good for you, excellent, way to be brave. I'm sorry you had to go through that. I'm glad you stood up for yourself. I'm glad the good guys won. How the hell can you think that the exact same scenario, the good guys and bad guys here, are exactly reversed from the good guys and bad guys of the exact same thing happening 100 feet away? But if you believe in government, you have to believe that crap. You have to be that insane. You have to be that delusional that you proudly advocate violence against your neighbors. Every statist does. Whether it's, well, I think we should all pay taxes in order to fund the blah, blah, blah. You mean demands for money backed by a threat of violence. You want all your neighbors threatened with violence to make them hand over money to fund whatever you think is a good idea. So these delusional, hypocritical platforms that allow that all over the place and encourage it, we encourage you to go out and vote and participate in the process of asking a ruling class to violently dominate and attack everybody you know. Because that's good, that's civilized, that's moral. But if someone says, not only do I think that's wrong, but that's obviously violent aggression, I think we have the right to defend ourselves against that crap. You're the violent, evil psycho. The one who looks at that house in the middle of the night and a woman asleep or in her bed and some psycho with a badge, or usually a bunch of psychos because they're complete freaking cowards, barge in and point machine guns in her face, screaming at her, drag her away in handcuffs to cage her, looks at that scenario and go, yep, she's the bad guy. These big, violent, attacking strangers, they're the good guys, because politicians over there somewhere said, don't do what she did. That is the insanity required to believe in government. And people's view of violence and the use of force immediately just becomes so demented and twisted and backwards. And it's, I could go on. I will end just by pointing this out. In any other time and place, or even in this place, but a different time, if you point out, for example, the laws upholding slavery, and say, well, in that case, were the law enforcers the good guys? Everybody goes, no, of course not. What about the people illegally or even forcefully and violently helping slaves escape, trying to get away? Is the slave who smacks his master over the head and runs away, oh, how could you condone violence? His whole life is violence. His whole life is being the victim of violence of his master and his underlings and the enforcers, all of that. Everything enforcing the insane, evil institution of slavery, that's the bad guy. And now we can all look back at that and say, well, yeah, that's bad. And if he has to use illegal force to escape that, good for him. That's totally justified. Or you can look at other countries and how about the people who resisted the Third Reich? Yeah, good for them. What if they even resisted and shot, like the Warsaw Ghetto, where, a handful of people who didn't know anything about guns had a few rusty guns and they held off the SS for a long time. If you don't know that story, look it up. And we laud them for being heroes. They were cop killers. They were criminals. They were terrorists. And they were the good guys. And if you believe in authority so much that it doesn't let you even think about that or talk about that, but you automatically side with the group of psychopathic, sadistic bastards who claim to have the right to rule, you're insane. And that tricks you into being someone who makes excuses for evil and condemns righteous self-defense. And right now, on all the major social media platforms, you will be praised for your courage for condoning the violent aggression of government against everybody you know. But if you dare suggest that the victims of some of the immoral aggression of state violence defend themselves, we can't have that on our platform. We are about civilized, peaceful. No, you're frickin' not. You're about subjugation and bowing to a masterclass. Bowing to the rulers and doing whatever they say, and don't you dare think of resisting. And that is the insanity that will infest your mind as long as you think that government and political authority are actually real. They're not.